There was a time when it was pretty difficult to find a modern high-resolution display for the Mac. I mean, we had like the LG Ultrafine 5K, and that was pretty much it for a long while. But now, now you have quite a few options to choose from, including this right here, the Asus ProArt Display 6K. And while it certainly won't appeal to everyone, it provides a pretty outstanding value for Mac creatives. So first and foremost, let's take a look at all the I/O that's included on this display. So obviously you have your Kingston lock, your power switch, your power input. Those are on the left side when you're looking at the monitor from the rear. And then in the middle, you have this little button that releases the VESA mount for the hinge, which is right here. And here's what we really are interested in, all the various I/O ports. So starting from the left to the right, you have your HDMI 2.1 port, which is right here. You have DisplayPort 1.4. You have the first of two Thunderbolt 4 ports. This is your 15 watt port right here. And then here's your 96 watt upstream port right here that you connect to your Mac. Then you have your USB-C upstream port for hub connectivity. You have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. The first of two 5 gigabits per second USB-A ports. There's one there, and then there's one here on the other side. And there's another downstream USB-C port, 15 watt connectivity. There's also a pair of 2 watt speakers, definitely not anything to write home about. You'll want to have your own external speakers or use headphones. The rear of the unit has the same overall familiar ProArt design. It's all plastic, the build is basically, and there's some metal in there for reinforcement, but it's pretty much an all plastic affair here, as per usual with Asus and pretty much any other third-party display manufacturer. The bezels are really nice and slim. However, you do have that large chin at the bottom with the Asus logo and all the buttons for controlling the OSD. The stand is likewise primarily comprised of plastic, but it is reinforced with metal, and it's pretty heavy to keep it firmly planted on the desk. You have the ProArt logo there. It looks good. It almost looks like polished aluminum to a degree, but it's mainly plastic. And we'll just go ahead and snap it into place. It easily connects to that stand just like that. And the great thing about the stand, besides the fact that it's included in the box, is that it has so many different ergonomic adjustments. So it can raise up to 130 millimeters. It can swivel to each side 30 degrees, like that, without actually moving the stand, which is super nice for flexibility. And the stand also allows the monitor to tilt plus 23 degrees or negative 5 degrees, like this. And then finally, this monitor can actually pivot 90 degrees in either direction, just like this. So the takeaway, you don't get the same sort of build quality and desktop stability thanks to a metal stand like you have on the Pro Display XDR or the Studio Display. However, you do get an incredible amount of ergonomic flexibility, so it depends on what you value the most. Now, obviously, one of the biggest benefits of the ProArt Display 6K is its dual Thunderbolt ports that support daisy chaining. So that's going to allow me to connect a second monitor directly to the display via that Thunderbolt port. So I connected this 27-inch high frame rate display, which maxes at 144 Hertz, directly to the Asus display. So I only have to use one Thunderbolt port on my Mac Mini, as you can see there, because I'm daisy chaining the connection from the first display over to the second display. So that's going to save ports on the Mac Mini or whatever Mac you're connected to. However, I did notice one major caveat to that, and that is that when you daisy chain, it doesn't appear to support refresh rates that are higher than the ProArt Display 6K. So in this case, 60 Hertz. So you can see this is my 32-inch display. 60 Hertz, right? And I'm going to switch over to the 27-inch display, which supports 144 Hertz, but you can see it maxes out at 60 when daisy chain. So to solve that, it's really not a huge deal. All you need to do is connect the high frame rate display directly to your Mac. Again, not a major deal, just something to keep in mind if you happen to be connecting to a high refresh rate display. If not, if you're connecting to a 60 Hertz display, it's not going to matter. You can daisy chain and enjoy. So I've done just that here. I've connected directly to my Mac Mini. So here is my 32-inch display, the 6K, and the switch over to the 27. And now you can see that refresh rate. You get those extra options, 100, 120, and 144. Nice to have those higher refresh rates, especially if you're connecting a MacBook Pro with a ProMotion display, so they match the 120 Hertz. You can match those together, or even the new iPad that supports 120 Hertz output. But keep in mind that daisy chaining isn't just relegated to displays, right? You can actually connect other things to that second Thunderbolt port, like an external SSD, for instance, and that may be all you need. You may not even need a Thunderbolt hub thanks to that extra port. Asus incorporates a matte display technology that they market as Lux Pixel, and basically the whole point of this is to reduce reflections, of course, but to do so in a way that helps to minimize some of the negative side effects of a traditional matte display. One of which is that, that soft image that where the text just looks kind of blurry and not very sharp. So Lux Pixel basically does two things, helps reduce the glare and lower reflections. And as you can see, it does a pretty good job of reducing glare. You can see how it does a good job of dispersing the light of the LED, but at the same time maintaining low reflection. And that's going to make, for instance, text on screen to appear sharper than it would and more crisp than it would when compared to a traditional matte coating. Make no mistake, when compared to a glossy display like the Pro Display XDR or the Studio Display, yeah, you're going to notice a difference. Text isn't going to appear as sharp as it does on those displays. But I will say this is pretty good. I could definitely live with this. It's definitely not as distracting as some of the matte displays that I've used in the past. Now, I imagine that a lot of people will be pairing this display with the MacBook Pro. And one of the things you'll notice is that if you go into the OSD and go into the presets, you'll see under P3 an M model-P3 option. And this preset is designed to match the color of your MacBook Pro's display. So when they're sitting side by side, there isn't this shift in color. They'll have that consistent look when sitting next together. And if you are a MacBook user, the Asus Display Widget Center is a utility that allows you to control the OSD functions directly from your MacBook, but it also lets you adjust the brightness of the 6K display using your MacBook Pro's shortcut keys. So for instance, here you can see me reduce the brightness of my MacBook Pro's display, just like that, using the brightness shortcut keys. But then if I move my cursor over to the external display and I use those same function keys, then you'll notice I'm able to adjust the brightness of the external display. Oh, and as you can see, the colors do match very well when using that M model preset. I was pretty impressed by how well they matched. But one of the primary reasons why most people will be interested in this display is just the sheer amount of resolution that it offers, 6K, right? So here's a 4K image compared to a 5K and 6K image, so you can really see how much more space you get with the display's 6016 by 3384 native resolution. But what does that actually mean in real world usage? Well, here is Final Cut Pro, and it's viewing a 4K video in the viewer at 100%. So you can notice it doesn't leave a lot of room left over for the timeline below. And you do have the browser, but I can't open the inspector and the browser at the same time while this video is at 100%. Now let's look at the same video at 100% 4K shown on this 6K display. And you'll notice a couple of things right off the bat. First of all, you have a much larger timeline area, so just a lot more to add connected clips and stuff like that and be able to see everything. You have your browser there open, and you also have the inspector open at the same time. So just a lot more working space there. And if you go into your display settings, you're going to notice that under the more space setting, which is the default setting, it runs at 3008 by 1692, which is exactly half of 6016 by 3384. So that's the native resolution of the Pro Display XDR, and it also means that the Retina mode, unlike 4K on macOS, is perfectly scaled for that super sharp text. And the display is calibrated out of the box with sRGB, obviously at 100%, DCI-P3 at 98%, and you can see the delta values for both, indicating very high average color accuracy for both gamut ranges. And I was able to verify this using a Calibrite Display Pro colorimeter, and I used the Calibrite Profiler software. I also used CalMan as well to verify the calibration. So basically the concept of this is you place the colorimeter on the display like this, right within the designated area, and it will measure the accuracy of the color right there for you. So this will let you verify not only color accuracy, uniformity, brightness levels, but also how well the display falls within the various color spaces like sRGB or P3, which both color spaces this monitor is targeted for. I also like to use this to measure uniformity, which basically tells you how consistent the luminance values are across the display. This is more of a basic test because there's only a 3x3 grid. You can get 5x5 grids or even more to really get more granular consistency across the display. But this will give you a nice ballpark of what we're looking at here. So basically, you put the colorimeter in all these various spots. It'll measure a white, a gray, and then a dark, and then basically give the luminance values for all three. And it'll do so for all of the various panels on here. So all 9 of those will go through and we'll measure them just like that. And then at the end, it'll give you a report and show you how consistent it is. So you can see there's a little bit of a hot spot in the upper, or I guess you could say a low spot in the upper right-hand corners where it's not as bright, but that's for the white values. For the gray values, it's a little bit more consistent. And then for the dark gray, you get even better consistency. So pretty well done here, in my opinion. From the naked eye, just looking at it, it looks pretty consistent and uniform across the display. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance. And like I said, I also use Cowman to measure the Delta E averages for the color accuracy. And again, I was pretty impressed by the Delta E average results here in this test as well. So overall, pretty happy with the Asus ProArt Display 6K. It's an IPS panel, so obviously you need to set your expectations accordingly with regard to HDR content and contrast ratios. Obviously not going to perform as well as the mini LED Pro Display XDR, which costs several orders of magnitude more. It's not going to perform as well as OLED as far as black levels are concerned either. But for $1,300 for a true 6K display with all the I/O, the adjustable stand, the color accuracy, I think it's a pretty good buy at $1,300. That being said, the LG Ultrafine 6K display also just came out and I just got my hands on it. So I will be coming back and following up with a review of that as well. So stay tuned. Thumbs up if you want to see that video soon. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Would you consider the Asus ProArt 6K? This is Jeff Benjamin with the 9 to 5 Mac.